Hello, everyone, and welcome back to American Ultras Talk. A new international window not only means a new USMNT camp, but also new US Youth National Team camps. And today, we're here to analyze the rosters for the new USA U20s and the USA U19s, which are basically competing for the same spots in the U20 cycle. The World Cup's going to happen next year. And you guys probably noticed by now that the person next to me isn't Yuri. Unfortunately, he couldn't make it today, but I'm instead joined by a very special guest, Sean, or USMNT Reports on Twitter, or X now it's called. People who have watched the channel for a while might remember you, Sean, because you did come on back in April for a top 10 most underrated USMNT prospects video. It was really fun having you on. Decided to get you on again for this one. For those of you guys who don't know him, he runs a really good X account that tracks American prospects from all over the world. So go give him a follow if you don't haven't already. The link to his account will be in the description, the first thing. So Sean, how are you doing?
I'm doing good. How about you? Thank you for having me on the show again. I appreciate it.
Yeah, definitely. The first time it was super fun. It was a great video. I had to have you back on, especially since your area of expertise seems to be the youth camps. And I mean, all of our viewers love the videos we make about the youth guys. So definitely thought it was a good idea to have you back on. And now I think let's just get into it. Like I said in the intro, these two rosters, they seem to be competing for the same spots. We seem to have an A team and a B team. The U20s brought back a lot of the A teamers who weren't released to the CONCACAF U20 Championship over the summer. A lot of guys from that team as well. And then a couple of new faces, whereas the U19s are basically a mix of some of the guys from the U20s that dropped down a level into the B team, really. And then some guys from the U18 camp that we actually had last window that I guess impressed in the camp in Japan. And then, of course, some new faces as well. So let's just start with the goalkeepers. For the U20s, we have Gavin Beavers from RSL. He's one of the A-teamers that wasn't released for the CONCACAF U20s in the summer. Julian Eystone was there. He was the backup goalkeeper for that tournament. He's from Brentford B in England. And then for the U19s, we have Duran Fari, who is, I believe, San Diego FC's first signing, but he's currently on loan at Nordsjælland in Denmark. And then Andrew Rick from the Philadelphia Union. As a fan of them, I'm personally very happy to see him. But Sean, I'm curious to see your thoughts on these four goalkeepers.
I think it's a pretty good goalkeeper group. I'm glad that Rick finally got called up. You know, can't really ignore him with your 6 MLS appearances. For Ray, I mean, I'm fine with it. I don't think it matters whichever one between him or Beaudry. I think they're pretty close to the same level, if not Beaudry's better than him. But, you know, it doesn't really matter in my opinion. Obviously, don't have coaching because he's injured, which is unfortunate. But, I mean, overall, I think it's a pretty good goalkeeper group, and I think they're pretty well distributed out between the teams.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. It is very unfortunate that we don't have Diego Cochin because of the injury. I mean, he was even included in his first senior USMNT call in the last camp. No doubt he would have been the number one for at least the U20s in this time around. But then again, it gives some opportunities, some newer guys like Andrew Rick, like Gavin Beavers coming back in, who I don't think has had the chance to be the number one in a camp yet. He was the number 2 behind Cochin. So it'll be nice to see what he can do in probably 1, maybe 2 starts in that camp. Adam Beaudry, I do agree. He's better than Duran Fari. I would have liked to see him here, but he was just recovering from a small injury. And I think at the time the rosters were made, he was still out. So I would think that would be the explanation behind him not being here. It's better to have him fully recovering back with the Rapids than re-aggravating the injury in a camp just like this one. But let's move on to the defenders now. And for the U20s, we have Noakai Banks from Augsburg. We have Noah Cobb from Atlanta United. Leo Duru, a new inclusion from Blackburn Rovers in the EFL Championship. Dual national with England and actually Nigeria as well. Ethan Kohler was with the U20s in the past from Werder Bremen's second team. Nolan Norris, the U20 captain from FC Dallas. Oscar Verhoeven, a new name from the San Jose Earthquakes. Josh Winder coming back from injury from Benfica B. And then for the U19s, we have Drew Byera from NYCFC, a right back who was previously with the U18s. Stuart Hawkins, a former U20 with the Seattle Sounders. Harbour Miller, another guy who moved up from the U18s from LA Galaxy's second team and MLS Next Pro. Neil Pierre from the Philadelphia Union second team. another guy from that U18 roster. Tahir Reed-Brown, I don't actually think he's been in the camp since the U17 World Cup last fall. He's from Orlando City, second team. And then Chibuki Ukaegbu, I probably butchered that name, but from Sacramento Republic in the USL Championship. So it's a lot of players here. If you want to take it one at a time by fullbacks and center backs, whichever one you want to start with, what do you think of these two groups?
Yeah, I'll start with the fullbacks with the U19s. I think Andrew Byra, sorry, I mispronounced his name, but I think it's a really good inclusion. I thought he was one of the top 2 players at the U18s in Japan. I really, really liked the way he played. You got Harbour Miller. I wasn't as impressed with him, but he's been decent with LA Galaxy 2 this season. So, but I mean, there's other fullbacks you could add over him. Tahir Reed-Brown hasn't had too much wrong with Orlando 2 because I don't know. They're what they're doing. I'm not going to go on a tangent about that, but let's just say I don't like the way they're handling their youth right now. And then, the center backs of the U19, Stuart Hawkins. He's not the most flashy guy in the world, and he's not better than any of the guys at the U20s, which is why he dropped down. But he's a stable presence to have, and I'm happy that he's on the roster. Neil Pierre is someone I've been really impressed with all season. I think it's impressive with how big he is, that he is fearless enough to have those passes into the midfield. He'll even dribble a little bit and combine in the build-up. You've seen that with Philly too a little bit, including that last goal that Kevin Sullivan just scored. So I'm really happy with him being there. He was really good with the U18s in Japan. And then Chibuki from Sacramento. I haven't really seen this guy play before, but I mean, he's played with in USL this year, so I'd imagine he has to be pretty good and has to be ready for this group, having to deal with the physical of playing against grown men. So I'm excited to see him play. And then with the U20s, Noah Kai Banks, I mean, this is a no-brainer. He's like a top 3 most promising defender prospect in the U.S. youth pool. I really like the way he plays. Same thing. He's good on the ball. He's big. And he's featured for Augsburg's first team and friendlies. Hasn't really gotten a opportunity in the Bundesliga, but I mean that's not too surprising. He's only 18-year-old center back, but he's played with the 2 team and the regional Liga. And then you got Leo Duru. I've had my eye on this guy for a long time because our fullback depth is so weak in this U20 group, and it's when you see a guy making the bench for the championship, you're like, oh, yeah, we need to start looking at this guy. And, he made his debut this season. He's played a little bit, but not too much, mostly with the U21s, but it's exciting to have him in this group. Nolan Norris, the captain of the U20s in the championship, I don't think he's super great, but, I mean, our fullbacks aren't very good, so, I mean, it's fine. Noah Cobb is another center back here. I think we have a pretty good center back group with this U20s, even with Akin and Boney injured. So, he has some experience in MLS. I'm happy to have him there. Even though I think he's probably the worst out of the 3 center backs in this group. Ethan Kohler, he plays right back a little bit for Werder Bremen too. He's a little versatile, but I don't really have too much to say about him. He moved from USL last season. Verhoeven, he's had some experience with San Jose and MLS this season recently. And I like his game. I thought he was good with the U17s, and I'm happy that he's, bumping up in this age group. And then Winder, I mean, not too much to say. He's a good player. He's one of the most experienced players on this roster. He's been good with Benfica B this season so far, and their fans seem to rate him pretty highly. And after they sell 2 or 3 of their center backs this next coming summer, Otamendi and Silva, there may be a chance that he can get an opportunity with the first team if he continues to progress. So I'm pretty happy with the defenders groups, with both of these groups, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I agree. I think I'm a little bit more happy with the center backs than the fullbacks, and I will start with the fullbacks. Aiden Harangi, I think, is a notable absence. Not necessarily a guy that I would have called up. I think he was a little bit disappointing in the qualifiers over the summer for the U20s, but he's, I think, one of only 3 guys from that team that didn't get called up to either of the camps. So that is a notable absence at the right back position. Leo Juru was brought in to replace him. I personally think that's an upgrade. Plus, you get a look at a new guy who, like you said, has been a part of the first team in the EFL Championship this season. That's a big thing, especially for this level. I'm really excited to get a look at him. Another right back from England, actually, Wesley Okadua. I would have liked to see him at one of these camps, U20s, U19s. It doesn't really matter to me, especially over a guy like Harbour Miller, who, like you said, I don't think was the most impressive with the U18s in Japan. And I mean, Okadua, he's been with the England U17s in the last window. He said he's open to representing the USA. He's not officially or provisionally cap-tied yet, so we could still have him in a friendly camp like this one. I think it's a little bit of a missed opportunity there, because he did say in a recent interview that he is open to representing the US, and it's something he actually wants to do at some point. So a little bit of a missed one there. Owen Priestess as well from the Columbus Crew second team in MLS Next Pro has been so good, can play both sides. So there's the versatility there. He's another one who I think deserves a look at both in one of the camps. He's an 06, so he would have been eligible for both. And then Frankie Westfield as well on the left-hand side. Similar situation to Priestess. He can play on either side. He's an 05, so he would have to be in the U20 camp. But I think he's a lot better, frankly, than most of the guys here. I think he's better than Verhoeven, despite not playing in MLS yet. I think he's better than Nolan Norris, who, even though he's the captain, did not impress me in the qualifiers, to be completely honest. Luca Bombino, by the way, who was the backup left back on that team, was another one that dropped out, which is kind of notable. But other than that, I mean, I think it kind of makes sense. To hear Reed Brown being here is a little weird, because, like you said, he hasn't played too much for Orlando's second team. Bringing in someone like Westfield, maybe moving Verhoeven to the U19s because he hasn't been with the group in the past, and he is an 06, I think is something I would have done, but not too much to complain about there. The center backs I really love. It's unfortunate that Matai Akamboni from DC is injured, like you mentioned, because I think he walks into the U20s group, but having Winder back from injury is a huge plus. Having Noakai Banks here, who we've sorely missed in the qualifiers, is a huge plus. I think, like you said, he's one of our highest potential U20s, period. And the fact that it's at a position of need like center back is another huge bonus. So definitely one to keep an eye on here. Noah Cobb, I'm not mad at him being here. I think him and Hawkins is kind of a toss-up. I'd actually put Neil Pierre ahead of both of them, but since Cobb is an 05, he could have only been with the U20s, so it makes sense that he's with this group. Grayson DeToni is one that I would have liked to have seen, but unfortunately there were some release issues. He was invited to the U20s, but Bayern wanted him to come back early. U.S. Soccer didn't necessarily like that, so unfortunately he's not here. He's someone who hopefully will get a look in some camp before the World Cup, because I think he's good enough. But other than that, I think we basically called up most of the main guys for the center back position, so definitely excited to see how they both do in their respective games. Let's move on to the midfield now, and then for the U20s, we have Benjamin Kremaski, of course, the Olympian, dropping down a level, which was kind of a surprise to me. I wasn't sure if he was actually going to accept a role with the U20s, but he's here and probably one of the best players on the roster, bar none. From Inter Miami, of course, Taha Habroum is also here from the Columbus Crew. Brian Moyada, a very new name, hasn't been with the group in the past. Very interesting call-up for me. From Los Angeles FC, playing for their second team. Sergio Odahel returns from the qualifiers from the Chicago Fire second team. Brooklyn Reigns from Houston Dynamo. He's technically part of their first team, but doesn't really play for them. He's also from the qualifying team, as is Pedro Soma. Just made a move to Barcelona, playing for their B team, Barça Athletic, in the third division, also playing in the UEFA Youth League with their U19s. Very exciting that he's here. Nico Shakiris as well, who won the Golden Ball at the qualifiers. One of the only number 10s in this roster. I think Kremaski can play there a little bit, but he's more of an 8. Shakiris from the San Jose Earthquakes. He's actually been playing a lot in MLS this season, so he has a lot of experience at the highest level, which most of these guys don't. And then for the U19s, we have Colin Gusk from Orlando City B. He was another one who was with the U18s in Japan. Impressed enough to get a call up here. He's been a regular in MLS Next Pro. Cruz Medina drops down from the U20 qualifying team from the San Jose Earthquakes. He finally scored another goal for MLS Next Pro. He's been struggling a little bit this season, which I understand the drop down to the U19s. Paulo Rudisil, I think, was one of the names who was not released for the U20s for the qualifiers over the summer from Feyenoord's U19s. He's also playing in the UEFA Youth League. Irvin Torres is here from Austin FC, playing for their second team in Next Pro. David Vasquez also drops down from the U20s, which is a little bit interesting to me because I thought he was one of the best players, won the Golden Boot in the qualifiers as well, but he's with the Union's second team. And then Nate Worth, a name who hasn't been with the group in basically 2 years. Really excited to see him back from Tampa Bay Rowdies in USL. It's always nice to see USL guys get some love. So what do you think of these two large and pretty stacked midfielder groups?
I think there's some good stuff to like and there's some bad stuff. I like Worth a lot. I've been talking about him for a long time now, ever since he moved to Tulsa. Unfortunately, his situation fell apart at the beginning of this season when they got a new manager, and he stopped kind of wanting to play the youth too much. So he got to move to Tampa, and he hasn't played a ton. Like he plays like every game as pretty much a substitute. He's got a couple starts, but he's continued to play pretty well, and I'm excited to have him on the roster with the team again. Irvin Torres comes in. He's played pretty good in MLS Next Pro this season. He's a little bit under the radar, but I like his profile. Cruz Medina, I'm sorry, but this guy is just so overrated to me. I don't think he's very good at all. From what I heard, he wasn't good in qualifiers either. He struggled in MLS Next Pro. He's picking it up a little bit, but I mean, he has talent, but I just don't see it with him. David Vazquez, like you said, he's a very good player. You can see at Philly too. He doesn't have as much attention as he used to because of guys like Olney, because of Sullivan, obviously. But I mean, he's a good player and he's a really good addition to this U19 team. Paulo Rudisill, I don't think this guy's really that good. He hasn't had a good start to the season with Feyenoord. He didn't start their last youth league game, but I mean, I think he's okay on this roster. And then Gusky, he hasn't played a ton. Well, he's played a pretty good amount in Orlando too. They seem to have liked him, but he was with the U18s in Japan, and I thought he played pretty well, and he scored in the last game against Peru. So I'm not too mad at that. But I mean, still, the biggest omission that I will never understand is CJ Only, because this kid, every time I see him, he's so good. I don't understand why U.S. Soccer really doesn't want him involved. It's really, really strange to me. And then the other one is probably Matthew Corcoran. He hasn't had a ton of playing time since he's gotten back from his injury at Birmingham. So maybe I understand it from that perspective, but I still think he should be on the roster in my opinion. And then the U20s is the one that's a little more frustrating to me. It is really nice that in qualifiers I didn't get to watch it, but I mean, from what I saw, the lack of experience with first team ball was probably some of the biggest weakness from the team. And Nico Securis and Benja Kramaski being there together fixes a lot of that. I mean, they have a lot of leadership, a lot of first team experience, 120 appearances, 42 starts, and 16 goal contributions with MLS first teams between the two of them. So I like that. I mean, I would be excited to see a midfield trio with Shakiris, Kramaski, and Soma. I think that would work pretty well. Now, the only thing I'm kind of concerned with this group is I know Shakiris can play the 10, but there's not a ton of creativity in this midfield. But I mean, you got other guys like Moyeda, who I really just don't understand this call-up at all. I don't understand why he's here over a guy like Olney, even Vasquez, who's with the U19s. I don't get it. This guy's played like 7 to 8 times this year with the LAFC second team. I saw that he did not appear at all in the first half of the season, so maybe he was injured. I'm not sure, but I just don't understand it. I don't really know this guy either, to be honest with you. Brooklyn Reigns, he's had experience with this group. I think he's just a solid guy to have at this level. I don't know how high his ceiling is, but I mean, it's hard to tell with how little opportunities the Dynamo gives him in his actual position instead of playing him on the wing. Sorry, saying that as a Dynamo fan, it's just frustrating. And then Sergio Regal, I don't really see it, to be honest with this guy. I don't really see it. He hasn't really played with the first team of Chicago at all. Maybe that's Chicago being Chicago a little bit and not giving opportunities to youngsters, but I don't think that this guy's that good. And then Habrun returns from the qualifiers. He's a good player, half Moroccan. He's been made the bench multiple times for Columbus Crew's first team this season. Other than that, I'm not really too mad at this group. I think it could be better with the U20s. But yeah, that's it.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that you mentioned CJ Olney. Obviously, I was going to mention him as a Union fan. I was actually going to put him as a winger, though, because, I mean, I think him and David Vasquez are very similar players. They just play on opposite sides. They can both play as a 10. They can both play as a winger. And, I mean, you mentioned a lack of creativity in the midfield for the U20s. I think we're going to see that even more when we get to the forwards. I mean, if you look at the wingers, not a lot of them are really true wingers. So having someone like Olney in there who can play at the 10, who can play on the wing, or like you said, moving Vasquez back up to the U20s where he did play well in the qualifiers, I think would have made a lot more sense than having someone like Brian Moyato in here from LAFC2, who I believe was injured in the first half of the season, but just hasn't really gotten a lot of minutes. As an 05 in MLS Next Pro, I think he's only played like 18 games over 2 seasons. It's just not what you want to see. And if you're going to call up a CDM from LAFC2, why not call up Jude Terry? I know he's an 08, but we have Nympha Berchimas. We'll get to him in the forwards, but he's an 08. He's been with this group before. He's impressed. Jude Terry, I thought, was very good at the recent U17 camp, and I think he has definitely a lot higher of a ceiling than Moyato does. So I would have rather seen him here. Eric Klein, I think, is another one who's very slept on at the CDM position, playing for New England Revolution's second team and Next Pro. He's played a lot. He's played well. He's very versatile. He can play in the back line as an 8 as well. If you're going to call up another CDM, I would have rather seen him, Terry. Corcoran, like you said, probably is better. He is coming back from a long-term injury, though, so I understand easing him back into action a little bit. Not having him here. Noel Buck is obviously one that we would have loved to have had, but unfortunately he's provisionally cap tied to England, which is it kind of sucks a little bit because he would have been a huge upgrade here, but nothing we can really do about that. For the U19s, I think there's a couple other players who deserve at least a mention. Darius Lane from Brighton was also with the U18s in Japan. I think he's a very exciting prospect. Aaron John as well. I mean, if we're going to talk about MLS Next Pro production and a lack of it for especially Cruz Medina, Aaron John has been so good in Next Pro, especially getting the goal contributions from the 8 position for Charlotte's second team. I think he deserves a look with the group at some point. I'm a little disappointed he's not here. And at the 10 position as well, I mean, I mentioned Jude Terry from the U17s. Is it time to promote Calvin Sullivan to this age group? I think for one of them, he could have done a job, and I mean, if we're going to talk about production Next Pro, he's barely played, and he's already doing better than most of these guys. So, honestly, I think he's good enough to be at this level, whether or not they wanted to call him, because obviously as an 09, they'd be playing up several age groups, but I think he's good enough. Same for Maximo Carrizo, who's an 08, was also with the U17s. I think both of them are probably good enough to make these rosters. Axel Perez is another one, trained with the Olympic team over the summer before that started, as did Darius Lane, of course. I think could have gotten a shout as a number 10. But outside of that, I mean, I think the midfielders kind of pick themselves. Outside of Moyato, at least, the U20s group is really, really strong. They played together a lot. Very excited to see what they can do, especially with Kromaski coming in. And then the U19s, it's a lot of names that I think are at least worth monitoring. So a very strong group across the 2 teams. And then for the final part, the forwards. For the U20s, we have Reed Baker-Whiting as a winger from the Seattle Sounders. He's traditionally a fullback. Luke Brennan from Atlanta. He's kind of a more of a wingback, a winger on the right-hand side. Aiden Dausch is a big one. Like Leo Duru, plays in England. He's a dual national with them. Is for Coventry City, the same team as Haji Wright, of course. USMNT fans will know. Actually made his championship debut at the end of last season. A huge prospect. He's been scoring for their U21s for fun for the last season or 2. Very excited to see him with the group. Peyton Miller as well on the left-hand side. I think it's very interesting that both of our left wingers really are more traditionally fullbacks, but he's been playing very well at left back for the New England Revolution in MLS, which is very notable as an 07. Ruben Ramos returns from the qualifying team. This one I'm a little bit iffy on, especially being on the U20s instead of the U19s, but he is here, probably going to play more of a winger position since we have Dausch and, of course, Marco Zambrano from Vitória Guimarães, second team in Portugal, the former Philadelphia Union product. He was the main striker in qualifying. He returns. And then for the U19s, we have Nympha Berchimas, who drops down from the U20s, despite, I think, being one of the best attackers from that group. A little bit of an interesting selection there. Jaikies Fields, I'm very excited to see, from Hoffenheim's U19s, makes a call-up for I think this might actually be his first USU national team call-up, which is going to be one to monitor for sure. I think based on the roster composition, he might be playing as a winger, more specifically on the right-hand side because there's two other strikers here, but I think he's more traditionally a striker. Kirill Figueroa, speaking of strikers from Liverpool's academy, drops down from the U20s to join this group. Xavier Goso also drops down from the U20s to join this group. He's a winger from Real Salt Lake, plays mainly for their second team. Makai Joyner, if we want to talk about MLS Next Pro production, there's no one better than Makai Joyner. 15 goals, 3 assists this season for St. Louis City's second team. Very excited to see what he can do on the left wing. And then Dino Klapija, another one who I'm very excited to see. The Croatian dual national. I think he's eligible for Bosnia as well. From Leipzig's second team, he's played for them in UEFA Youth League. Formerly of NYCFC's academy. Leipzig just bought him for about $5 million last year from a Croatian second division team. Huge potential on this kid, and I'm very excited to see him here. So a lot of intriguing picks here for the forward. So what are your takes on it?
For the U19s, I think it's a really, really strong group, to be honest with you. Berchimas getting demoted from the U20s is a blessing for this team. I think he's going to be the best winger on this roster, in my opinion. Selfishly, I kind of want him to not be with the U20s group, so he'll be with the U17s at the World Cup. I think that would be pretty exciting to see. But, you know, he got off to a slow start in Next Pro this season, but he's picked it up recently and he's got his goal tally up to 6. Figueroa, I've been kind of disappointed with this season, to be honest with you. He hasn't appeared that much for the U21s, doesn't have a Premier League 2 appearance, only appearing in the cup that the U21 team plays with. Has 2 appearances in the UEFA Youth League, starting one and coming off the bench, but he hasn't scored yet in only 4 appearances, so I'm a little disappointed with him. And from what I heard, he wasn't that great in qualifiers, so I understand them getting dropped down. Makai Joyner, I'm excited to see this guy first time with the U.S. Youth teams, I think. But, I mean, obviously, as you said, his goal contributions have been crazy. 15 goals, that's second highest in MLS Next Pro total, playing with some grown men in there. So it's cool to see him in there. I think he is definitely warranted a look. Fields, I'm very interested in. He has got off to, talk about strong starts, 9 goals and 8 appearances with the Hoffenheim U18s, including a 4-goal game against the Saarbrücken U19s, the 3 Bundesliga team. This is his first time with the German or the U.S. youth teams. And some of you guys may remember him from being a guest player with the FC Cincinnati U17 teams at the GA Cup, where he played the Philadelphia U17s, the star-studded team with Neil Peart, Kevin Sullivan, all those guys, and he even scored in that game. So he's a good player, and I'm excited to see him. Gozo, I've been high on for a long time, the Ivory Coast dual nat. And then Klapia has not been with the U.S. Since he was in America with the U16s. He moved, obviously, to Croatia from NYCFC and he was on an MLS Next team with Carrizo, Shore, Byra, McFarland. Speaking of Shore, just for a little second, I think he's a guy that could have been with this U19 group in the midfield as well. He's been productive in MLS Next Pro. So overall, I'm happy with that U19 group. I'm excited to see those forwards play. But it's a stark contrast for the U20s to me. I don't understand this group. Reed Baker-Whitting and Peyton Miller listed as forwards. I just don't understand it. But, I mean, you know what? Maybe they're using a back 3 because there's 3 strong center backs. You know, use them 2 as wing backs. I understand that. They both have experience there. They're both pretty good in attack. But, I mean, I don't understand U.S. soccer's obsession with making Peyton Miller a winger. He played there on the wing at the U17 World Cup and was just not as good as when he's a fullback. He's come into New England Revolution's first team and has instantly become really, really good. I would argue one of the best U17 players in the world playing at the first team at this moment in time. I'm excited to see him with this group, and he most definitely deserves it. Aiden Dausch is a very good inclusion in this group because strikers is a weakness, to be honest with you. You know, obviously he debuted with the Coventry first team last season. You know, he's friends with Gio Reyna's family. I'm excited to see him with the team. Ruben Ramos Jr., I'm a little bit higher on him than you are. Out of any of the out of the younger guys, 07s and youngers that were on the U20 team, I think he deserves it the most. That's just my opinion. So I'm excited to see him with them. He's been productive in MLS Next Pro this season, more than Gozo and Berchimas. And then Luke Brennan, he's had a little bit of experience with the Atlanta first team, not too much though. They're a little stingy with giving him some minutes, but I think he's fine being on this roster, especially because the wings are kind of weak. Just overall, the attack is kind of weak with this U20 group. Some of the biggest exclusions is probably Canon Koglu with the Frankfurt 2 team. Even though he is provisionally cap tied to Turkey, I mean, you can give him a friendly game or two. Just give him a call. See what he thinks. I think that was a real shame with striker being as dire as it is with this group. Cole Campbell, I don't think he was released. He's in the upcoming Dortmund first team match day squad. So I'm okay with him not being in this squad if he's maybe going to get some minutes. And then, maybe a guy like Tariq Scott maybe should have been there for the wing spot. He's been very good in MLS Next Pro this season as well. Has like 1 or 2 appearances with Dallas. Not too many appearances, but, it would have been good to call this guy because, Jamaicans will definitely come calling for this guy eventually. And then, maybe I will give a shout to Julian Hall. I think he could have been with this U20 group as well. Maybe he wasn't released by the Red Bulls, but I mean, I think it's a fair shout to say he could have been there.
I think the forwards are probably the most controversial group in terms of exclusions because, I mean, like you mentioned, Cole Campbell, I think it's also likely that he wasn't released, and I'm definitely fine with that. If he's going to be training with the first team over the international break, that's probably a little bit more beneficial than playing against U20s, especially since for at least the U20 group, they're going to be playing Chile twice, so it's only one team. I think Campbell not being here is fine from that aspect, but he's by far and away the best winger prospect from this group, from the U20 eligible players. I think another one that, like you said, Tariq Scott, he's got 9 goals, 3 assists in Next Pro. He definitely could have been in the group over Luke Brennan. I think he's been a lot more productive. Also got a couple MLS minutes, not that many less than Brennan did. So I think he's one to watch in particular. We both mentioned them earlier, but CJ Olney and then maybe moving up David Vasquez as players who can play both in the midfield and as wingers. Like you said, I don't understand the decision to have Baker Whiting and Peyton Miller both as wingers, especially when the fullback group is so weak and there's so many great wingers that can be called up, and even players who play at the 10 that can also get moved out wide. I just think that it's kind of a shame that we're wasting Peyton Miller. We're wasting a player of his talent in a position that he's not necessarily so comfortable with, especially when he's been so good in MLS at the left back position. Another one, Christian Fletcher, just came back from a long injury. It would have been nice to see him here, but again, I understand he was still out at the time when they made the roster, so it makes sense that he's not here. It'd be cool to see Montreal Colbreth as well, the Germany U18, but he is provisionally cap tied to Germany, kind of like you said, Kaan İnanoglu is provisionally cap tied to Turkey. That does mean that they can't be in friendly camps, unfortunately. So a little bit of a shame there because it'd be nice to get a look at them, like you said. And then from a striker perspective, I like the fact, I really love the fact actually that Klopija and Fields are here for the U19s, Aiden Dausch for the U20s. I love the fact that all 3 of them are involved in the group. However, this may seem a little bit harsh, but I think Zambrano and Figueroa both should have been dropped. I don't think either of them were very impressive in the qualifiers, and I know a lot of people really like Carol Figueroa because he's at Liverpool. Like you said, he's just not been impressive. They have a huge U21 squad. He's not getting into matchday squads with them. Sure, he's playing with the U19s a little bit, but he's been out of form for a while now, and to be honest, I think we have to reward players based on form and not just based on the size of the academy that they're at. So seeing someone like Eddie Davis, who's 4th in the Golden Boot race in MLS Next Pro, has been on fire this season, not get a single call-up or even a mention from a lot of people for this camp, I think is kind of ridiculous. I don't know what more he has to do. He's also an 06, so he would have even been eligible for the U19s. I think it's a little bit ridiculous that he's not getting a look. Julian Placias as well just made the move to Westerlo. He's playing with their reserves from North Carolina FC in the USL Championship, is one that I think maybe deserves a little bit of a look at some point. And like you said, Julian Hall, I know he's an 08. It's a little bit young for this group, but Nimpa Berchimas, who I'd argue should probably be in the U20s because I think he's been better than Ruben Ramos, and he's even a year younger. He's actually a true winger, unlike some of the fullbacks that we had there. It would have been nice to see him up with the A team, but I think just Julian Hall, back to him, I think, like you said, I mean, he would have definitely been an improvement on one or two of these players. Deserves a look. He hasn't been with the U.S. youth national teams in a while. I believe he was supposed to be in the U17 camp last month, but wasn't released. Maybe he wasn't released for this one as well. But regardless, it'd be nice to see him given a chance at some point, because I think if he's released, of course, for the U17 World Cup next year, he's going to be a huge, huge asset at the striker position. But a bit of a long one there, but we dove into every single player on all these rosters. So let us know, guys, what do you think of both of these teams in the comments? And we'll definitely be back. I don't know if Sean will be here or not. I guess we're just going to have to see. But we're definitely going to be back with a video breaking down both of these camps once they're over, so stay tuned for that. I mentioned the U20s play Chile twice, the U19s play Sweden, and they play Japan. The schedules for both of those are below the rosters on screen now, so take a look at those. Make sure to catch the streams for those if they have them. Hopefully they do. I assume they will, but let us know in the comments if you want to see more videos like this. Yeah, it was long, but we love making the U.S. Youth National Team content. You guys always seem to love it, so we wanted to go as in-depth as possible, and we'll see you in the next video.